the coach. His name was Dustin Felder, because remember, it was an acting class I had never done. So he was like, stand-up comedy is your into the industry.
Of all the teachers, I said the one guy that really made an impact that was palpable and tangible and gave me a different outlook was Bill Hall.
My dad, he's been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He taught like the 4 rules of gun safety.
It was always the meth, but like right out of the gate, it was Carter and Keith Hernandez. Those were the guys.
I just want to say thank you. I've been watching you since I was a kid. Like I watched the Chappelle Show, and we would recite that shit all the time.
It surprised me how much I enjoyed. I coached my daughter's softball team this year. It was one of the best times of my life.
I dedicated this to Angela because I would not have done any of the stuff that I've been doing had it not been for her.
What's up? Welcome to episode 157 of the People We Love podcast. I'm Adam Choate. For more about this show, please check out peoplewelovepodcast.com. That's peoplewelovepodcast.com. That will send you to my link tree where you'll see all links related to the show, social media, all that stuff. I'm at Adam Choate on Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me. AdamChoate.com for everything else that I'm working on. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Please subscribe on YouTube. Give this show likes, shares, comments. All that stuff is definitely appreciated. Today we have consultant and entrepreneur Robert Lowe, originally from Hong Kong, then having moved to California with his family. We talk all about that family, his sister Mary's influence, and his journey from a kid who could barely speak English to becoming a well-rounded athlete and academic himself. Robert explains the consulting world to me, but also tells me all about his latest venture, Alset, which is an exciting app and platform for bartering and exchanging goods and services. This idea and app and venture was originally inspired first to him by Nikola Tesla. But let's just get started. Here's Robert Lowe. Okay, so it's good to see you today, Robert Lowe. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate you having me on your show. I really look forward to our conversation.
Oh, for sure. How are you holding up during whatever year this is? I forget which one.
2024. It's been a very interesting year so far. I made my way over to Africa already and Saudi Arabia. So I've done some traveling abroad, and I've been to Tennessee and Kentucky. So a lot of places I hadn't normally thought I would be going to, and then here I am.
That's a definitely diverse mix of places for sure. Not very, very different, those places. We can get into that, and I know you've traveled quite a bit. Why don't we go back and you can get into your backstory and tell me about like where you grew up and did you have siblings and whatnot? Earliest memories. I even sometimes ask people sounds, images that jump out at you.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. Well, I was born in Hong Kong to a gentleman named Wing Noon, and he migrated over from Canton after the communist takeover, and he made his way over to Hong Kong and fell in love with my mom, and they had my sister, and then 4 years later they had me. And probably the earliest memory that I have is, I would say, 5 years old, where I would say 4 or 5, 4 maybe. No, it was 5 because I was at elementary school and I was cutting a cake, and I had skinned my knee that day running to school, and my dad picked me up right afterwards, and he bought me. Usually there's like a street full of vendors, and I remember him buying me fishball and Pink Panther and candy. Very indelible day for me.
And this was in Hong Kong?
Yes, in Kowloon. Yeah.
And you break down where you grew up, like from 0 to like graduating high school or whatever.
Yeah. Good question. I was born in Hong Kong, lived there from 0 to 6, And then my parents decided to migrate over to Los Angeles, California, from 6, probably 7, and then we moved out to a little provincial beach city called Ventura from 7 to, oh, I graduated from high school there.
In Ventura County.
Ventura County, the Ventura city, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, Southern California. Well, tell me about like when you were 5, 6, 7 years old, going from Hong Kong to the United States. What do you remember about that? That must have been traumatic. I mean, or amazing. I don't know, or both.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I remember telling one of my closest classmates, that I'm going to be leaving, and I told him to meet me at the airport. And of course, he was so young. He was the same age as I was. I was 5 years old. He was 5 years old. And I was telling him, I think we're leaving. I don't know where we're going to go and how long we're going to be gone for. And I said, will you see me off over in the airport? And he said, yeah. And I think that was the very first time I had experienced disappointment in such a grand scale. Because at least for me, I would thought, oh yeah, people are going to do what they say. And we were really best friends. And of course, you couldn't just jump in a car and
Drive.
drive himself there. But yeah, we got on an airplane, and I just spoke to my mom about it today too, ironically, and she said it was Air China. It was a Taiwan airline to direct flight to Los Angeles, and we arrived on a Friday. She was very distinct about it too. I was like, wow. She remembered everything too, and I was like, oh yeah, that was quite an experience, because I remember how long the flight was, and I was very. I don't know if you were this way as a child, where you were antsy and you ran around, or were you one of those kids that kind of, you were able to just sit still?
I probably was maybe more well behaved than the average child, but every kid is capable of impatience and expressing impatience in one form or another, and being
I
unruly about it.
I think I was one of those kids, because I
Yeah.
think I ran, up and down the aisles. I just remember something really. That's my recollection. Yeah, I think I was a bit antsy on the flight there, and yeah, it was definitely traumatic, because we lived with essentially with our mother side of the family, and grew up with most of those kin folks, and so all of a sudden we went from living with those folks to my dad's side of the family here in the States, and there was such a transition, and the culture was such different, because they already had acculturated themselves into as being American, and we were really FOB, like really fresh off the boat. We had I couldn't speak a lick of English, and neither could my sister really, and we probably got made fun of so much. I remember, yeah, growing up, the neighboring kids were cruel to us.
At least you can laugh it off. I'm more hurt by it than you. I'm like taking in every single painful memory that I've ever had in my life and be like, oh, I know what that feels like through whatever your personal experiences are, but you're like laughing about it. No.
Oh yeah, there was this bully. There was this one kid, I think it was my sister's, because my sister's 4 years older than me. I remember it was her peer, and he did not. I mean, he had a bone to pick with her and me for some reason. He liked to taunt us. Um, And then I remember, like, one time I was gonna get back at him, and I was gonna, and what was it? I ended up throwing a mitt at him, and then my sister was like, no, because he kept the mitt.
Like a baseball mitt?
Yeah, it was a baseball mitt.
Oven mitt?
No, it was a baseball mitt. We love playing
That might
baseball.
hurt more. Yeah, that's cool.
I think it hurt my sister more than anything else. I didn't think I did a dent on him at all.
But it just seemed like well, I mean, this is quite a few years ago, but what else were you like as a kid in elementary? Because you said you were like 6 when you moved, something like that?
Yeah. So my first transition to really recollecting an education here in the States was this elementary school called Bull Rogers, and my first grade teacher was a African American teacher named Mrs. Turner. No, Miss Turner. Miss Turner. And she was probably the most beautiful lady I had ever met.
You recognize you recall this as like a 6-7-year-old or whatever it was. 6-year-old?
Oh yeah, I had a like a young kind of crush on, because I never seen such a beautiful lady before, and as a teacher too, and she spoke in such a soft and eloquent way, and she was very kind to all the elementary kids. So first graders, everyone loved her, and I loved her. She was really great.
That's pretty distinct memory for a teacher that goes back. I remember which of my teachers were maybe not ugly. That's as far as like I can go. I'll be like, oh yeah, maybe she was okay. I think looking back, I could.
Yeah, Mrs. Turner. She was. I say Mrs. Turner. I think it's Miss Turner, and I feel like she just had that composure about her. Even when she taught cursive writing, and it was just so wonderful to watch her, and she smelled so beautiful.
Dude, I'm gonna get her on. She's gonna be my next episode. You guys Facebook friends? Is she on Instagram? She's probably an influencer or something. I mean, I joke, but you never know.
You never know. It's interesting. I don't think I made such an impression on her, because she ended up pulling me back for another year of first grade, because my English had not improved that much. So
Yeah, that was my next question. Are we getting adjusted at all or what?
no, it was very difficult. There was like trying to learn English, because my parents didn't speak English, and they came here and they worked most of the time with my aunt and uncle, and so they left me kind of to fend for myself. And my sister, who was 4 years older than me, ended up being my caretaker. And she wasn't really that great of a good she wasn't that great of a caretaker. She was really trying to like be a child at the same time.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. But yeah, it wasn't really until I went to second grade where Mrs. Voiceberger really like coached me and taught me sort of the beginnings of English, and I really kind of buckled down.
What was her name?
Mrs. Voiceberger.
That sounded made up. I thought that's what you said, and I'm like, that couldn't be it.
She looked like okay. You know the Incredibles? Is that what it is? The cartoon?
I suppose.
That like short little the designer of all the clothes, of all the superhero clothes. She's kind of short with sort of a like
Edna
bang.
E mode.
Yes, Edna. She looked like Edna Emo. That's
teachery. That's teachery.
That was Mrs. Voiceberger.
And she got mad at you when you were not like she kept you focused on learning English, basically.
She was a taskmaster for sure. She was, yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, you have such a seems like pretty vivid memory of this stuff. So I mean, it's like, would you even remember what if anything? I mean, sure, probably everything. What was like the biggest challenge with the language? Because it's such a hard language to learn, from what I gather and have seen. Even on like some of these videos where I see people trying to learn English or explaining why it's so hard with things, just like the way things are spelled and idioms and all this stuff.
I think people take it for granted. Like for you, Adam, you grew up in a Western civilization, so you had that structure already in place with your family. I remember they pulled me into speech class because I couldn't pronounce ch and they made me sit there and speak with the speech teacher for an hour every day, pronouncing various letters. Yeah, I had a very like arduous time learning the English language because it just wasn't my natural language.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's obviously so different from the Asian languages compared to like the Romance languages and European languages, which, you know, there's overlap with English and Spanish, French, and Italian, and all that.
Yeah, and my folks, for the most part, spoke Cantonese to me when we were at home. But then I would try to go back to school and learn English, and I really don't feel like I got it until I was in fourth grade. Like Mr. Crosby, he was a riot. He would make us sing in order to leave class. Like at the end of the day, he would make us sing, like Clement, oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine. So we had to learn all of these like songs. But he was a great teacher. He was that kind of like military teacher. He was probably like the only male I actually had in my elementary school, Mr. Crosby. Really nice guy, but he was he was also somewhat like Mrs. Voiceberger. He definitely ran a tight ship.
What were you into as far as like when you were in elementary school? Were you into like music or arts or sports or Asian stuff, or still, or were you becoming more you know, assimilating getting into culture stuff?
Yeah, probably around like fourth grade, I started to, because my English had accelerated quite a bit. I was watching a lot of cartoons, and I loved like watching Garfield and G-Force and a lot of trying to think Scooby-Doo. I consumed so much of that like during my fourth grade year. I
So,
loved Yeah,
yeah,
I loved like TV, like Gilligan's Island and all those kind of like sitcoms.
yeah, I got into a lot of that stuff too from that era and whatnot. And Garfield and Friends, like that's excellent. Like Garfield is such a funny. I almost want to go back and watch that later on. Garfield is very funny and very sarcastic and witty, and he's kind of like mean to Odie, but it's funny. Characters used to be meaner to each other. I think
Yeah.
am I missing? Am I wrong about saying there's a certain like they're mean, but they're not mean spirited. I keep like Ren and Stimpy and I guess Cartman's kind of mean spirited, but
Yeah,
I guess it's hard to explain. Like there's the mean characters used to be more likable. Maybe that's what it is, more well rounded and nuanced.
yeah, Garfield is definitely snarky to Otis for sure.
Oh,
Like
Odie.
Odie, sorry, yeah, you're right. Very, very like snarky to him at all the time. Uh yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Ren and Stimpy for sure. Pinky and the Brain. I mean, there's so many of those like
Yeah,
antagonists. Yeah, I
because
love
that exists in
cartoons.
the real world. It just and so I don't know. It's
Oh yeah,
relatable
for
or something.
sure, for sure, for sure.
And
Like look at Gargamel and his cat, right? The Smurfs.
right. And I feel like we're all capable of being this, not to go too deep, but I feel like we're all capable of being Ren or Stimpy at times, like losing our patience and with someone who's dumber than us, and then like, you know, the other, whatever the relationship is with these characters, like being on both sides of that, and that's kind of makes it relatable to these cartoons.
Yeah, I think that's so true though. My sister and I definitely had an antagonist kind of relationship, but for sure, when I think about growing up, how she liked to tease me a bit, and it's interesting if I don't know if you're an only child, but having another sibling definitely brings out that kind of personality.
Yeah, I have an
'Cause
older sister also.
oh, okay, so you know, it can be a little bit scary too, because once they enter high school, it's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
yeah.
Were you a good student in elementary school and middle school, you know, as we progressed through academics?
I would
English aside.
say, yeah, yeah. I would say probably. The only teacher that probably would say that I was a good student was Mrs. Skihan, my third grade teacher. My sister sort of left like a legacy everywhere I went. Like in fifth, she entered fifth grade when she first arrived. Mrs. Ward loved her, and I remember being compared to my sister. There was like, oh, I was like, I'm not going to be like my sister. But I wasn't terrible in academics. I kind of fell into it differently later on. And I actually chose to go to a different middle school than my sister went to. She went to Cabrillo High School, I mean, Cabrillo Middle School, and I went to Botanic Captain Middle School for that very specific reason.
Just because you wanted to do because you were. I'm not gonna. Well, yeah, because you wanted to do your own thing and not have to feel like you had to compete with her. I'm not phrasing that in the best way, but
no, it was exactly that way. It was that feeling of like being in her shadow, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have that problem.
Oh, yeah.
My sister's listening. Not that I wasn't an amazing student or anything. We didn't really have a lot of the same teachers anyway. A handful. People probably, the administrators probably know when like siblings and relatives are coming through and our last names. And like, oh, she's this student. I wonder what kind of student they're probably somewhat in the loop about academic grades within families and how does that work out? Are they both smart? Is one dumb and one smart? How does this, what's the dynamic?
Well, your name is very distinct like mine.
Right.
Like it's not going to be like, are they related? They're going to know immediately that we're related. They're just going to be like, how are we related? Are you
right
cousins?
That's true.
Sister? You know what I mean? And then once they figured out, the level of where you are in relation, then they're like, okay, let's see if this person, if it's close in proximity, they're like, okay. I remember in high school when I went to Ventura High School. Oh gosh, my Spanish teacher loved my sister, Mrs. Mara. She loved, and I had Mrs. Mara, and I was, oh, we just didn't. And at that point, I was really strong in my academics. I was really like, I was already now in AP classes and reading and writing pretty like strongly. So Spanish, and I love Spanish too. But oh boy, she had it out for me.
Why? The Spanish teacher had it out for you?
Yeah, I think my sister just was, like there was, I think my sister had developed such a strong relationship with a lot of the teachers in high school. So like high school, I decided to go to the same high school my sister went to. And also it's because a lot of my friends went to the same high school. You know what I mean? It chose it now because of friends versus like trying to avoid my sister. But again, that whole stigma of like being my sister's shadow kind of came creeping back in. And yeah, I think Mrs. Morrow was one of the professors, one of the teachers. My volleyball coach, who he loved me in the beginning because I was like, I was a starting sophomore varsity volleyball player, and he coached my sister also.
Yeah, volleyball too.
Yeah, and I don't think they got on with each other. So he glommed on to me a little bit better than he did with my sister.
There you go.
Yeah. So Mr. Baldwin was great. He was a no nonsense kind of guy. He's just really chill. He kind of reminds me of you. Just really lax, didn't have a lot of like, you have to do this, you have to do that.
I keep all that stuff to myself, but everybody should do what I say.
Yes, exactly.
And I want them to do what I say all the time, 24/7. Too much to ask?
I think that's what Mr. Baldwin wanted. But he was so quiet about it, he just like, he was a really good, but there was a threshold. If you didn't do what he, like after so many tries, he would just like, okay. He would pull you by the ear and just tell you.
So you were into volleyball, you were getting better at academics in general, you're getting smart, sounds like, getting more comfortable in the US and all that stuff. What else were you into in high school? And I guess even going to junior, senior year, continue me on the journey. Where did you think you were headed? Were you going to college, working, traveling somewhere? What are the plans, from freshman year to senior year? Who are we and where are we headed?
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'll go back to my sister only because there's an interesting kind of thread around that. She she was a starting varsity basketball player in sophomore year as well, and so she had gained a lot of friendship with a lot of, I would say, popular people, I guess, in the sports arena. So when I came into school, 4 years after her, I kind of inherited a lot of her friends, if that makes any sense. Like
That makes sense.
they were older classmen, but they were really nice to me just because they knew that my sister had been playing
Yeah,
volleyball. I was
that's politics. That's
that
high
is
school politics right there. This is
yeah,
politics. This is
yeah,
life. I
yeah.
mean, if you don't learn anything in high school about like academically, you can certainly learn from some life experiences, I suppose, that mirror the real world and the political world and whatever. Go on.
No, it's so true. I think you're right. And it was one of those being like sort of incumbent in a family, right? That I inherited this great treasure trove of popularity with the upperclassmen, which made it easier to make friends, from all the other middle schools that kind of funneled into this high school, right? So our high school was kind of made up of like 4 or 5 other middle schools. So it was great to then kind of meet a lot of people, and I was probably very gregarious and extroverted, I would say. Um, I ran track and I played volleyball, and I did play basketball for a couple years, but then I stopped after I made varsity in volleyball. So I focused more on that and also track. Um, let's see.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. 'Cause high school was one of those things where there's a lot of activities going on. There's always the pep rally and um, going to the football games. Ventura was one of those schools. At least Ventura High School was one of those schools where we were really into a lot of like team sports. So we all sort of attended our each other's sports and games. We would get a lot of high attendance. So it was
Yeah,
nice.
high school football was probably pretty big in that area. Well, how many people in your graduating class, I guess, is a good way to to get an idea how good your football team might be.
Yeah, about 2000, and a lot of times we made CFI, so we had a lot of people who, and we were a very well-known high school to get people into a lot of good colleges. So
Yeah, your games are on like TV and stuff, local TV, like high school football, all this, and broadcasters. Like
yeah,
football in the United States is quite big. Maybe Texas is its own thing in itself, but like California, Florida, a lot of states and all over this country, people get crazy for high school football. Yep. Hmm.
yes, it's a big thing. I remember our coach, Coach Kochel, he was such a big, like he led us on down to CFI all the time. So we played in a lot of the big championships.
That's cool. And what
Yeah.
about junior, senior year? What are the plans looking ahead to beyond high school?
Yeah, so I was college bound for sure. I wasn't quite sure where exactly I wanted to go. I was in a lot of AP classes, and a lot of my friends in those classes were looking to go to East Coast or a lot of the Ivy League schools or more like Stanford and Berkeley. They were very highly competitive. Um, I just wasn't as competitive about those kind of things. I wanted to kind of stay more local. I wanted to stay either like I had looked at UCLA, UCSB, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. Um, I looked at a couple of other local schools, private schools like Pepperdine and Masters College and Biola. I looked at um,
You looked at more
Boulder.
schools than I did. Even sounds. I applied to I think 10. Did you
Oh,
apply? Did you apply to all? Well, maybe you just were kind of checking these out, or did you apply to all these? Or
I applied to, I think like you, 10. I think I skimmed it down to 10, and I think I applied to Santa Cruz. A lot of the UC schools So UCLA, UCSB, Santa Cruz, and I think UC Berkeley, and
Every school
Cal
in
Poly.
California.
Cal Poly. Yeah, it was all California based. The only real out of state was Boulder,
Right.
Colorado. Yeah, that was the only one that I actually thought about. But yeah, I my graduating class, I would say a lot of the kids really like wanted to go to like Harvard and Yale and Cornell and Brown. They were just really like gung ho about it, and I was kind of like, So I studied in UCSB, um, and then I kind of just wanted to focus really on my career that way. I took a semester early on in my senior year, like right between my junior and senior year, as a I guess I don't know how you call it, but it was basically you take a semester at UCSB and you take courses there, and I took a couple of classes there, and I really liked it. So it was a school that I really enjoyed a lot.
So you went to Santa Barbara for 4 years or for
Yeah, so I actually went to UCSB in the beginning like my junior to sophomore year as a just to test it out, and then I got really good grades, and I was considering going to UCSB and I went there for a little while, and then I transferred down to Pepperdine.
I see. Okay, so a couple of schools. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I ended
Pepperdine, both scenic places, very cool places to go to college for sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where I kind of end up going to, because I what I liked about UCSB was the academics, but what I didn't care for too much was the big classes. The classes were huge. You could be in a room like with 200 people and never really get to know anybody. It was really kind of, yeah. I don't know which school you went to, but
Syracuse,
oh, Orange Man.
East Coast.
My sister is an Orange Man.
Orange. Do they
Yeah.
call them orange women? I don't even know what it is. It was orange men for a while though. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. She loved it. She loved it. She went there for her graduate school for her MBA.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it was an experience.
Yeah.
That's an interesting experience for sure. Yeah. And what did you say you were studying at this time?
At the time I was studying natural science because I wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do. So I wanted to just keep it very open. So it was kind of it had a lot of like biochemistry, math, calculus. So I wanted to open myself up to that area because I wasn't sure where I ended up wanting to go in my career. So kind of the whole science background was kind of where I wanted to, and I thought I was going to land in that field, but I wasn't interested in the medical field after I graduated. And so I had to kind of reevaluate like what I wanted to do, because after my first year out of college, I really wasn't sure like if I wanted to work for a company and which company I would work for, because I didn't really have an idea that I wanted to become a business person per se. And so I was kind of a thistle in the wind, if you would say.
Right. Well, I'll let you continue on the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So my studies of, I think, at Pepperdine, what really shaped me was that it was it had a kind of a spiritual element to it. Every Monday we would have convocation, which was very interesting because you would have to go to um, the gymnasium, and there would be well over 5,000 people in the gym. Just like packed in there. Um, And obviously it wouldn't fit all those people, but it was like everybody would go, and that was kind of a requirement. And usually like it was required for the freshman and sophomore year. And they would, I don't know if you're familiar with convocation, like
No, I was gonna add some kind of prayer, is what I'm guessing. Is that, am I wrong? Am I
yeah, it's kind of a like a, think of it like a service, like having like a Protestant service, and there's usually a speaker, and they usually talk about faith and the Bible, and then yes, and then we would pray, and then we would start off our week that way.
okay?
Yeah, it was a very interesting, experience that, I now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't thought about that in so many years, but I think it was such a, in those formative years, it's so important to have some of that kind of structure spiritually.
What branch of, was it their Catholic school, Pepperdine? What is it?
It's a it's a non-denominational Protestant school, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that what faith that you were raised in, were?
Yes. They have
Okay, well that makes more sense. That, at least, or in this, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, I probably glossed over a bit of that. I in
that's
high school
okay.
in high school, I had a good friend who she she was really into church, and it was really her mom who was more faithful, and she kinda got wrangled into church, and somehow she wrangled me into church with her, and so, like, um, we went to youth group together, and it was kind of funny because I ended up really enjoying that experience because everyone was so nice, and I just remember having such a devout relationship with God at that time. And I went away to camp, and I had such a big experience with my with my group that it really like brought me closer to my relationship with Christ. So it just changed the whole aspect of my relationship. And and that's why I kind of wanted to go towards more of a smaller Christian school versus like something like UCSB, because the school, it was a great school, but it was so well known for its, party. My sister went there, and she had a great time, and she made some great friends, but when I went there, I liked it, but I also felt like I didn't fit in. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, like you knew it wasn't quite your cup of tea. I don't know if Syracuse was like that for you or not. If you feel like you were like completely like that was like a perfect fit.
I think it was a good fit, and there's a lot of things I did like about it, and there were pros and cons. But one thing that does kind of jump out at me is that it's big enough where you could constantly and continuously meet new people, especially year after year with this turnover of people coming and going. But it's also this, you have the dynamic where you're walking across the quad or through a neighborhood, and you're going to see familiar faces that as well, and run into people all. So you can meet new people, and you could see people. And I thought that's kind of a good fit, and it's a good fit, I think, in terms of like being sort of an artsy. It's like it's a well-rounded school in terms of like the different studies that are there, and I think that makes it. I got your hippies studying nature and sciences and trees and all that stuff, and then you got the communication school, and I think there's law program and whatever. It's not Ivy League, obviously, but then there's obviously some creative stuff in arts and media and things like that. So I think it's a well-rounded place, and I don't know, it's good for people to be in bad weather. Also, it's character building, maybe just to be in terrible weather, and it's not just that it's cold or snowy; it's that it's overcast. So that would be a drawback, but it's character building. I'll keep telling myself that.
Yeah, I mean that was one great thing about Pepperdine. It was like
The opposite.
it was quite the opposite. I mean, it was so great. And the one thing I liked about the school a lot, and it's really like there were so many fun people. Like there were a lot of like great people that you could become friends with and go places with. I just remember always going off campus. Even in my freshman and sophomore year, we would just go like into Malibu, or we could go to Santa Monica, or we drive to LA, and it was great because we could get away. We were close enough to get to the city, but then you could drive back, and then you were kind of back into this little kind of bubble. And
Right.
it was nice because a lot of my friends were a mix of different groups too. Like I had friends who played sports, and then I had friends who were just kind of academic, and then I had friends who were, you know, and this was the first time I kind of experienced like even like demographics. Like I didn't even realize like because growing up in Ventura, there was not a lot of Asian folks, so I didn't have a lot of Asian friends. And then like this was the very first time I started to like I have like oh Asian friends. So
You have that's an interesting journey you have there. I don't know. I guess part of me assumed that because you did mention moving, like being with your dad having family in the States. So I'm like, oh, he's probably has some kind of like Asian community network that he's a part of or something. But you never really had that growing up in well, you said you before were you before Ventura?
oh, when I was in LA, yeah, for a little while.
Yeah, in LA briefly, but you spent most of your time in high school and life in
Ventura,
Ventura,
yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
funny.
and literally there was Dyron and Romy, and Quan. There was like literally 5 other Asian kids in Ventura growing up, and I could count them in my head. And it was just different, like I just had more Caucasian friends all growing up, so I didn't realize there was an identity difference until I got to college, and then I was like, oh wow, there is a big difference here. And then like once I started to identify with other Asians, I was like, oh wow. And then it was like they would start speaking to me in our native tongue, and I was like, wow, it's so weird how I missed so much of like growing up as like like in Hong Kong. There's a very specific culture in Hong Kong, and it's like everything kind of in Cantonese, at least in Hong Kong, it's kind of slang, so it's much more loosely said. And the written language in China and Hong Kong is unilaterally the same. So the written language is the same. It's the spoken language that's highly different because the dialect is so different that you can barely understand it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when I got to my sophomore year and started to realize that there was like the group of Asians, I started hanging out with them too. So that really kind of and it was funny because they were very like specific about hanging out. Like then there was like they hung out all the time. Like there was like Asian group, and then there was like, and then I felt kind of off because I was like hanging out with my other group of friends.
It's like you're cheating on your other different groups or cheating on this was where were you again? Did you say?
This was just on campus so Pepperdine. So
Pepperdine.
your freshman and sophomore year, you have to be on campus. Like so, like I felt like I was cheating behind all these different groups. I don't know, like I don't know if you had just one group, but I had like literally like okay, there was like Dean and his group, then there was like Janet and her Asian group, and then there was the swimming group and the volleyball group. There was quite a few like groups that I hung out with.
I feel like in college, like not like I mean, people definitely get exposed to different friend groups and there's overlap. And my friend circle was fairly diverse or whatever. But I think there's something to be said, like when you're forced into a high school, and my high school graduating class was pretty small. It's like 180, 200 or whatever it was.
Oh wow, okay.
But it was pretty diverse ethnically and in terms of like the background, very diverse actually. Because it's New York and Long Island. So I think there was more like people didn't really think yeah, there was more just like people are friends with each other and whatever. Yeah, I mean, there was some clickiness based on like, common background or whatever. But for the most part, it wasn't really as clicky as I felt like in college, where you really had more separation between the like races and ethnicities, not in an exclusive way, but just in like I'm gonna go where I'm most comfortable with, and it's beyond just because of people who look similar, but that like kind of was something that I kind of observed and felt the vibe. Whereas in high school, just like everyone sits wherever in the cafeteria for the most part and can sit anywhere. Like I don't know, it was a little bit.
Yeah. So you did see a difference like between high school and college too.
I think there were more like actual institutions at colleges also that almost not in a DEI way in the year 2000, but like, oh, this is the black club, this is like the Hispanic. I mean, you had some of that in high school, but that was more just to like get the credits to get into high school. Whereas if you're in those clubs in high school, you're more like more how you're choosing to dedicate your time versus and who you're spending time with versus like trying to get a credit for your resume. Your do you call it a resume? I don't even know. What do you call it? Your what the fuck is permanent record? What do you application?
Yeah,
College application?
Yeah, it's your college applications. Yeah. I did. That's where I think it was quite a lot of discernment between different groups. I felt like there was moonlighting between all these different groups, and it just depended on my mood on that day. Like who was I gonna hang out with?
That's a commonality between, I feel like, a lot of people I talk to on this podcast, maybe even in terms of just like creative and certain people who have certain types of personalities or brains or the way they operate, just kind of jumping from group to group and try, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not necessarily I have to be in this, like getting too locked in with one particular friend circle and wanting to explore different groups. Where were we? I'll let you continue the journey from college into to life and beyond.
College to life was really kind of a rude awakening, and I think because you go to college, you think that you're gonna go to the workforce and start looking for a job, and I wasn't quite ready to go work yet, and I wasn't really prepared, necessary to. I don't know if college would have prepared anybody really to go to start your first job. I don't know if that's like I'll from my experience, I just feel like I didn't learn any of the Microsoft stuff, to be like going into an office and doing any like major spreadsheet or starting to type any real major documents. Um, and on top of that, I wasn't looking back in hindsight, of course, that's what I'm talking about. Um, I had to really kind of assess like what I wanted to do. I had sort of an interest in real estate at the time. And I remember like, okay, I'm gonna apply for a real estate license because I really wanted to start like working for and I didn't know if I wanted to do residential or commercial. So I decided to at least get my sales license and then start applying for jobs that way. And one of my first real serious job after college was getting this job at Grubb and Ellis, and it was a commercial real estate company, and it was a position for a research manager.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it was a great job. I mean, I got to learn so much about Los Angeles and the various real estate markets, both on the commercial side and on the industrial side.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and I got to publish a newsletter every quarter and talk about the vacancy rates and about the office occupancy rate and vacancy rates, and just how the market's doing overall. It was a great job.
That's very cool. Yeah, I spoke to this gentleman last episode, Angelo Veltri, and he does a lot of like he's basically like a citizen. He works for guns rights organization. It was National Gun Owners of America, I think is who they are. But he does a lot of lobbying and citizen lobbying things and whatnot. And he talked about his passion for analyzing data and taking that and having that lead to action. It sounds like that you're like a similar person. And I was reading a little bit about it. It seems like you're someone who is skilled and interested and capable of analyzing data and coming to like conclusions and taking action based on that. Is that something that you're about?
I am. It's been such a great, like, yeah, I think that job really got me to focus on looking at information and analyzing it and dissecting it and making good decisions off of it. Um, that that job kind of looked at all sorts of different parts of Los Angeles. There was the tri-county, they call it the Tri-City, which is Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena. So that was one area that I was responsible for, and then I was also responsible for most of downtown Los Angeles and some of parts of South Korea, Koreatown. So that area was very, very like heavily looked upon because there were so many people trying to get into the retail space there. And so the newsletter was a kind of a great marketing tool that was used. And it was kind of funny because I had to interview a lot of the brokers to find out how the market was doing and get a perspective from them, not only from a quantitative perspective, but then get a qualitative answer to like, commensurate with what I was writing. So it was a great job. It was probably one of the best starting job I had. And then I wanted to get more into like a serious like job in terms of like consulting. I wanted to be more like into, and my sister had just gotten her MBA, and I wanted to go back and get an MBA as well, and sort of get into that whole consulting business. And I looked at a few schools, but Pepperdine was one of the best schools out there, and so I just reapplied there and got my MBA there. And I remember working while I was still trying to get my degree, and it was great. I think the part time was a good way to like still get experience and get your education.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did your sister go to Pepperdine? Is that where she got her MBA also?
No, she went to UCSB and then she went to Syracuse to get her MBA.
Oh, that's right. That's right. What's your sister's name?
Mary.
She seems like she says such an influence on you, and really a positive influence on you. Other than like the trying to avoid her shadow, it seems like she's inspired you in a lot of ways over the years and pushed you to do better without even saying anything. Do I have that correct? Or has she always pushed you overtly, and not in a bad way, but just like looked out for you or something?
Yeah, she really had a perspective of like what she wanted to do in life, and she seemed like early on she knew like she like wanted to get into business and wanted to like make a life for herself. But she ended up getting married and having 3 kids. And
There's nothing wrong with that, but
no, there wasn't.
But her trajectory may have seemed different, is what you're about to say.
Yeah, exactly. So that changed it a lot of like it redirected her so truly to another like strata, and she's better for it. I think she's really much more suited to be where she's at now. But yeah, so I really gave it a lot of thought. Like, okay, in order to really do what I wanted to do, which is get that kind of experience, and I was looking already at a couple of companies that I wanted to work for. I was thinking at the time I wanted to work for Arthur Anderson in the real estate market, and I even considered PricewaterhouseCooper as another consulting company. And at the time, I remember getting an offer from both of the companies, and I chose PwC only because they had their reputation for some reason seemed a little bit um, more grounded than Anderson at the time. I don't know, for some reason, and I really wanted to go with Arthur Anderson, but interestingly enough, as you probably well know, it ended up, getting dissolved because of the whole Enron situation. So it was probably best that I ended up going with PwC instead.
Tell me, like, what to someone who knows nothing about consulting, which I guess is me. You're consulting mostly businesses on making business decisions based on your expertise in analyzing data and markets. Is that essentially what you do? And also just based on experience and insight and just gut feelings. What the hell is consulting? How do I become a consultant? Can I just call myself one or what?
Yeah, yeah, I'll call you a consultant.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other part of the story about going with PwC was that um their real estate practice was a little bit more on the um restructuring versus Arthur Anderson was more about real estate development. And I was more interested in sort of the nuances of how to restructure organizations. So the reason why I went with PwC was that I would get more experience in areas, or I thought would be, especially if a market turned, you could get more experience about how to restructure an organization. Um, Essentially, in the world of consulting, um, there's probably maybe like, I'd say, a handful of really well-known consulting companies, and then there are a lot of other consulting companies that are not that well known, but they're just consider themselves boutique consulting companies. It's kind of like the two worlds that you work in. Um, but you want to start out with a big brand name because those companies kind of give you the gravitas in your CV, your curriculum vitae, that kind of gives you this, cachet into basically going to,
Credibility.
yeah, street creds to all the other companies. And so when you go in consulting, what happens is that you can, one of two things later on in your career, you can go into what we call industry. Like you choose an industry you want to go into, and then you can become like a manager or director, whatever the ladder you want to climb, or you just stay in consulting all your life, which that's kind of where I end up staying. It's consulting. I like consulting because then I feel like you give clients better opportunity to help them make change. Whereas when you're in the company, sometimes I call that going native. Once you go native, it's harder to make a cultural impact on the organization.
That makes sense. Like if you're too, you can't be objective or make
That's right.
clear decisions when like when you're that invested, when you're living that much of an insular professional existence, you can't see beyond sometimes because everyone tends to gravitate towards what they've been doing, I guess, what's comfortable, and that may not be what's best.
Yes. The consulting world is funny because there's the management consulting side, there's the IT consulting side, there's also like the soft HR, organizational development, organizational design, human behavior kind of aspect of it. So there's three kind of strata in which consulting occurs. I was in the management consulting, which means that I was really working with a lot of the like management team. And usually what they would like us to do is focus on, their processes and where they could gain some efficiencies through low hanging fruit and help them with like like if we were doing like a restructuring for an organization, we would look at their income statement and then we would look at their expenses and then immediately just identify the ones that we thought would be really helpful for them to focus on, and then we would look at their clients and see who with our clients would really be beneficial to maintain and focus. So we would help them kind of direct their energy in the areas that they would want to concentrate on building.
Makes sense.
When I went into the organizational design side, it's a little different because you're really looking at culture and you're looking at sort of organizational redesign and how to place specific people in certain areas so that they work more efficiently and more effectively. And there's a lot of assessing of like behavior and characteristics, communication skills, and how they align with the culture, which is also aligned to the mission and vision. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. That's the softer side of the business. Now, I liked doing both because I like to quantify like a return on investment based off of like, a culture change. I like doing something like that. That makes that, because it's a soft side, but it also shows you that you can quantify those numbers. Like companies who want to work from, who are going from like an adhocracy kind of culture to a market culture, and to help them assess kind of where they want to go.
Gotcha. Sounds like some nerd stuff, but good, but important and crucial and needed. And
Yes.
it's funny how this only seems to exist in the private world, in the private marketplace, and where individuals and companies and corporations have to interact with each other, as opposed to the government where there's no accountability and they don't have anyone like you overseeing all the waste that they commit every day. Is that what's going on?
Well, when the government calls in anybody like us, that basically means that we're looking up their skirt, and I don't think they generally want us to look up their skirts because we might see things that we don't want to see, and then that we have to report back to them. Like, it's a lot of accountability. It is
Yeah.
a bit.
They find someone different to look up the skirt that will report something favorably about what they find.
That's right. There are, or that's the.
They do their own investigation.
It's interesting because a lot of like, the company like PwC, and I also later on worked for KPMG. These are major organizations where government, like the IRS, loves because they're big company. Their companies are known for their accounting practices, right? So they love that they go out there and help audit all of these. They trust already these big organizations that can go in and help audit their financials. Now, where I came in, I wasn't really on the accounting side. I was more on the management consulting side, which is kind of what most accountants dream of, I guess. That's kind of like they would love to be a consultant, but they're so rigid and like the numbers too much, which is hard for them to cross over, if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense, and I could see how they would want to do what you do because you're getting to tell people what to do, not just report on what's happening. Is that the gist?
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said earlier, where like in my earlier career with Grubb and Ellis, you take the data and analyze it, but then you're actually looking at what the narrative says and how it supports what you're looking to help them achieve, essentially.
Gotcha. You want to tell me about Alset? Should we get into that?
Yeah. So
now Tesla was an inspiration for this and solutions to the world's problems. I'll give you the floor to tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so this was probably around 2016. At this point, I had done some really personal inner journey work on myself. I had done a lot of I would say medicinal work, I guess. I guess that would be probably the best thing to say. And I was exploring a lot of different options in life about like where I wanted to go. And now I've had such a wide range of experience with so many different companies. I mean, we're talking about, just a little name dropping here, but like Warner Brothers and Cisco, Nordstrom, Microsoft,
Consulting
Google.
for all these consulting
Yeah,
for all these
yeah,
companies.
yeah, consulting for all these companies, and I've gotten to really look at how organizations work and where their single failure points might be, and how they all report up to the CEO, and then how their processes, their systems all integrate, and where those issues all kind of crop up. So what I really came to a conclusion was that a lot of organizations where they have failure points are generally around human resources. And if you look at a P&L of any organizations, it generally is made up of the P&L is generally made up of salary and expense. I would say about 60%, usually on the average, somewhere between 60 to 75% of the income statement is made up, and that's basically human resource. So like that's just being on the average. Now, like if you go into a heavy equipment organization, for example, like a industrial, like Caterpillar, their P&L is going to be much different. It's going to be
What's
like,
P&L stand for again?
oh, sorry, profit and loss statement. Yeah. So you look at all their profits and losses and their net income. Most of the time, when you look at like a general company, and I'm just thinking off the like some of the companies I just mentioned, right? Those are probably made up about 60% of their income is salary. That means that their workforce is the most vital part of their profit and loss statement. So
Fire
for me,
everyone you can. Am I following correctly so far? I'm not
no.
against this per se.
No, but if your income statement is made up of that many is made up of human capital, it would behoove them to find the right people so that they would have a more efficient, effective company. And a lot of times what I found was that a lot of these people were just misfits. They didn't fit in their role, and they were very unhappy. And what was causing that was because they didn't want to leave their company job. And a lot of people do that as safety and security thing, because they've been there for so long, and they've earned the title that they wanted, and they do it well even though they hate it or they don't like it. But that doesn't do the company service, and it doesn't do them personally service. So it made me really start to think, like, how is it that we could start shifting this culture? Because these people won't leave their jobs unless they have some sort of option. And so like around 2016, 2017, I started toying with the idea of like developing an app. And at that time, I was really kind of inspired. And I was sitting on the 405, and I was just thinking, like, how could we create an app that would really benefit somebody? And I was just, for some reason, Nikola Tesla had kind of came into my field, my purview, and everything started to like accelerate in my thought about how he wanted to give us free energy, right? And we're nothing but energy, exchanging energy all day long. Why don't we create like a modern day version of a bartering app that would allow people to, trade their goods and services and really help each other? And also, I thought to myself, but that's not enough, because bartering, people can't live off of bartering. I mean, they're just like, if they were to quit their job today, they just wouldn't be able to do it. So I thought, okay, well, let's keep the paid service side on there, so that way people can earn a living still and also commensurate it with bartering. But then I was thinking about those kids who don't, go to college or don't go to trade school or don't, actually want to pursue a life of, the corporate life. So what happens to those guys? And I thought, well, why don't they just do favors for a while? in exchange for reviews until they get enough cred, enough street cred, then they can go into the paid service side feature of the app. So the whole idea is that you would start out, doing something new. Like let's say you got fired from a job, or you didn't want to go to secondary school or college. Then you would go to the app and put up whatever service it would be or goods that you can make. Some people do jewelry. Then you give it away, or you do something for free, and in exchange for the reviews, you get enough glowing reviews, you could switch over to the bartering or the paid service side. So it's not just a work lifestyle app, it's a work lifecycle app. So all throughout your whole life, you could be doing favors, bartering, and paid services. And I'm really trying to shift our culture from a consumer to business, which is what our current economics system is, to a consumer to consumer, peer to peer model, so that we can really keep all of that intrinsic value and wealth within communities.
Is there anything like this? Sounds super exciting. We've talked a little bit about it already, of course, but
Yeah.
is there anything comparable like that is going for something like this? Because I feel like there isn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of all the apps that are on my phone. There's nothing quite exactly like what you're describing. It's like different elements, but not all of those elements together.
There isn't, and that's why I wanted to, this is kind of like a disruptor of all disruptors, whereas like Uber was a disruptor for the taxi driving industry, and you've got Agoda for the hotel industry, and you've got Upwork for kind of the monsters. Like there's a lot of been disruptors of disrupt, but we're like the ultimate disruptor of all of these industries. Because
I was gonna say it's not just like Fiverr has services, but you can't really trade services for service. It doesn't have quite the what you're offering.
That's right. So like it gives you, the platform has 3 different sort of venues. So you can either do favors. Some days you might feel like you're being generous and benevolent. You want to like just do favors for somebody. And then other days you're like, no, I need something in return. So like you can barter with them. And then other days you're like, no, I need to make some money because I'm gonna starve to death tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, so it gives that flexibility of people to make those decisions. And I wanted people to give them that flexibility of like bartering for what they what they want, and then working for what they need, like rent or whatever, until we can move out of the current economic system.
That makes sense. That phrase is gonna ring in my head in the coming days and weeks. What do I have to do again? Work for what I need and barter for what I want.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of how I felt like that would be. That's the one of the major benefits of going on the app. The other benefit is the notion of recycling. So like if you have, like I know so many people who have kids and they buy these, strollers and toys and clothes, and they just have all, and the kids grow up so quickly, and then they have all of this, inventory of things, and they don't know what to do with it, or they just goodwill it, or they thrift it, or whatever, but they don't really know who it goes to ultimately. Like in the app, at least like you could give it to somebody, and you know that you're going to physically give it to somebody, and you're recycling firsthand knowledge of who you're giving it to, versus right now the way we're doing it in society is like, oh well, I'll just leave it out in the street and hopefully the trash man will pick it up. It's like I really want to also not just upwork and upcycle everything. I really want to get that whole experience. And in your twilight years, what I'm hoping, like, when you get to that place where you've learned all the skills that you needed to, and you're ready to transfer it over, you could favor it to somebody who's young and who wants to learn it. So it's kind of a tribal knowledge place too, so that it's not just like, that's what I mean when it's not like just a lifestyle app, it's a life cycle app, because all throughout your whole life, you could be doing things that really contribute to society and to the community.
That's very cool and commendable that you're working on this and have this going and all that. Like, yeah, that makes it really stand out that it's a place where you can learn skills and try new things and prove yourself and build up the credits and credibility to, you know, make money at something if you stick with it enough. Has like, have you had to in like, because this is up and running and then and all that, of course, right?
Yes, it's up and running. It was up and running in September 2019 in the iOS, in the Apple Store, and then January of 2020 in the Android store.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious how, like, you can catch me up and tell me how things are going and where we're head, how things are looking ahead into the future and all that. But have you had a lot of like challenges, like dealing with like legal aspects of setting this up, and how does it work with does Uncle Sam try to swoop in and get his cut of things? How does the legal and government and all that stuff and if somebody sells karate lessons and kick someone in the face, do you get sued? How does this all work?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. Um, we're basically the curator. We're basically the meeting place, right? It's kind of like we're kind of like the place where people introduce themselves. We don't actually like, whereas, for example, Uber takes a percentage of like a driver's revenue because they're taking on more liability of, like, you know, the whole transaction. We're not involved in any of the full transaction. We're just trying to introduce people so that they can, you know, make that connection. And then really it's I'm trying to keep it as a private affair, and so that's how we should be living in general right now. The way that we've been living in society is that a lot of people have put everything in the public, and so that's what's causing a lot of this friction and why we always end up going to like court to sue each other because of the liability that we can have these issues. The way that we're supposed to really, I think, like how I've been operating is like trying to really live in honor. And it's kind of the way I believe. And living in honor means kind of like two things. One, um, being honest and forthright about who I am and to myself and to others. And the other thing is really to decrease any controversy around anything that's related to me and somebody else. So like, for example, it's a good example, like what you said, right? Like, let's just say, for example, you and I offer you karate lessons in exchange for your um, uh, podcast show. Okay, let's just say that, right? And you go to my studio. When I'm showing you some jabs and I'm showing you some, you know, kicks, and you know I roundhouse you by accident, and you because you turned your head too quickly. Like, the first thing I ask is like, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "No, I've got a broken jaw," right? Well, the first thing I would do is then I would say to you like, "Okay, how can I help you to like correct the situation? Take you to the hospital, you know, drive you there,
Yes,
pay for your
please.
pay for your medical expenses." You know what I mean? Like, those are the kind of things those are the things that I'm responsible for at that point. You know what I mean? Those are the things. Um, so, but I mean, this is more of an extreme case of what happens. Usually it's more of a pride thing. Like, I may have like tapped you on the face and then you got upset that I, you know, might have done something to you. And then it becomes more controversial. So like, if I didn't really do anything controversial to you, other than hurt your pride, then I ask you like, how can I, you know, wrong the right, essentially. Make an apology, take you out for lunch, whatever it is, you know, then that's kind of like the honorable thing to do.
You can kick me in the face for lunch. It's fine. It's fair trade. Where are we eating? Well, that's cool. That's very exciting. I'm sure it's coming together. So what are the future plans? Where are we, and what's the future for Alset?
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's like I said, we're going to a consumer to consumer um culture change, so that requires quite a big lift. and I'm in that space of trying to get 1 million user downloads this year. This is the middle of our. I think we're at 170, day 175 tomorrow.
175,000.
No, day 175 of our challenge to get 1 million user download, and we're getting a slow trickle effect of people. We probably got about roughly 7,000 users, active users right now, and we've gotten well over like 30,000+ downloads. But it's a strength by numbers thing. So I need to get people on there so that we can really get it going. Because think of it in terms of like, if millions of people are on the app and they're trading something that somebody else wants or needs, then it's easier for people to transact. But right now, people haven't had that notion and they're just comfortable with their current situation and they don't see the benefits of going from a consumer to consumer versus where they are right now, which is a consumer to business. But if we all jump on our app, like, come on, let's think about it for a second. Like, I have a Free Friday thing where I tell people to look at their house for a thing or two that they don't want, right? Like, how many things do you have at home that you're like, okay, I can get rid of this. Like, I don't need this. And I could post it on Alset, right? I mean, that's what Free Friday is all about, right? It's to like look around your house and just, you know, post it on the app and I'm giving this away for free. And people will be like, great, that's what I want. I want that. You know, like you might have an old bike that you don't want, or I have a friend who just bought a cruiser for $25 on another app. But like those are kind of the things. But my other friend traded her pottery for cookies.
She traded
So
what for cookies?
a pottery. She did
Oh,
pottery.
pottery.
Yeah.
I thought you said padre, like she traded her dad for cookies. I was like, what?
She traded her.
I mean, padre.
It's su padre, yeah.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so it really is a strength by number. So I need people to get on board and start helping me with the culture change because it's a big mission, and you know Rome wasn't built on a day. So
Gotcha. Well, you're about to have 7,001 people
okay,
on
great.
there.
Okay, great.
I'm not giving away my stuff, but I'll sell my junk if people want to buy any of this shit that's around here.
Yeah, we'll do it. I mean, but do you know what I'm saying? Like you get gifts all the time, or you have things that you're like, oh, I don't need this anymore, and like people all have things in their house that they could probably like gift.
And it's just once that and like it's easier to sell this stuff or get rid of it just or whatever to gift it through your app versus even like Facebook marketplace or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, this is where I there's so many disparate apps out there. That's why I was saying like you've got the Upwork, you've got Facebook Marketplace, you've got Craigslist, you've got Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, you got so many Angie's List, Craig. You know, there's so many different disparate apps for very specific services. This is a kind of a one-stop shop, and ultimately, I like everybody to be doing one of the three things. And what I'm hoping for is that future generations don't feel like they had to do what you and I had to do, which is go to Syracuse and Pepperdine.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? Like if you look back now, like the cost of our education is affordable when we went, but kids who are going back to school now, there's the cost of getting an education and then trying to find a job that starts out at 25,000-30,000 a year. They're not going to have a chance to pay off their loans. They're just going to, and then to even start a life after that. That's why it's best to try to keep it. That's why I've been trying to say like go consumer, because then all that wealth kind of stays in with our community and people can see the benefit of that intrinsic value.
Yeah, no doubt. Good stuff. Good stuff all around. I'm excited to dive into it more. Anything else you think we need to cover or talk about? What about ghosts or aliens? Do you believe in these? Have we had any experiences with either UFOs?
Ghosts and aliens. I believe that there are aliens out there for sure. I think that whole extraterrestrial thing is uh, related to the terrains that we aren't able to access, but I think that's kind of like governmental secrets that are being hidden from us.
I
So
talked to the aliens though, so I certain. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
It hasn't happened.
yeah.
But you haven't had any experiences with creatures,
Abduction?
abductions,
No.
or seeing any strange things in the sky or anything like that.
No, and I've always looked for it. I mean,
You seem like the type who I'm waiting for my alien story from you. What about a ghost story?
ghost stories, no ghost stories either. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, apparitions and aliens have not come and bothered me for some reason. They don't like my vibration, I guess. My frequency is a little off for them.
I have the thought that like the reason why that stuff like that doesn't happen to me and you, because maybe we're like sort of stable, not to like toot our own horns, but we sort of have we're not like trauma, like what's the word, broken in the same way that maybe or have like some unresolved, something seriously unresolved that we need to be, or we've just been lucky because a lot of people like places are haunted, and I think it does sometimes have nothing to do with like who's living there in the present. It's not like, oh, you were meant to be at this place, like you just happen to be in some haunted house. But I guess I don't know, maybe we don't have a need to be haunted or studied by aliens yet. They're letting us go or for some reason.
Yeah, I don't think I think we're not susceptible. We're not like, we don't have that frequency of like being taken like under and being examined without some sort of, I feel like you and I would probably be like, no, that's not going to be happening.
Yeah, but not yeah, it's hard to explain how we would resist it, but something
Yeah,
we can resist it like with like our personalities or who we are, or just like through
yeah.
sort of some sort of subconscious, unconscious. Like we're talking about things that are unexplainable, so we
I
can.
think I think it's definitely at the subconscious level, even because like you have to be, there's a willingness in the subconscious level to be doing that.
Right, we're not
And
putting out an alien or ghost energy. It's all
we're
about the
not.
energy we're putting out. We're putting out positive vibes only, trying to uplift humanity.
I know. I wish I had a great story for you. I really do.
You've given me plenty already.
I mean, I wish I had a good alien story because
No,
you
you
know
should have
they.
made one up, but now I know you would be making it up if you did that now, so it's too
I
late for
I do
that.
bel I do believe that there are Tartarians. So how's that? How does that strike you?
Who were they again? I forget this. I think they've come up.
They were the like the what would they call, I guess, the Nephilims, the guys who were like mixed with the angels and the humans. They're like the tall giant, and that's why we
Yeah.
see a lot of those statues like that were like 20 feet high, because it's basically statues of them.
I've heard of this. I haven't really gone down this rabbit hole, but I think I have the rest of my evening is planned out right now for sure. Thank you so much for the stories, the time, talking about Alset and Sister and Tesla and all kinds of stuff in college and the beach and Protestant non-denominational faith. Oh, we covered a lot.
Yes, and the last thing, Adam, if you ever want to play volleyball with me, doubles volleyball, beach volleyball,
I'll come watch
open.
you play and drink. Can I do
Oh,
that?
oh, you can, but open invitation. I'm just letting you know. We
I'll just
could,
come hang at the beach. I'll
yeah.
bump it. I'll bump and maybe set. You do the spiking.
Okay, yeah, but you could do.
We like the same height on this podcast, but in IRL it might be a little bit different. So you're at the net.
Open invitation if you're interested.
Very cool. Thank you. Why don't you tell people where they could find you, follow you, plug anything you want to? I'll let you do your thing in that, with that.
Yeah, very great. Yeah, so on social media, on Instagram, we're Allset_community. You can also find us on our website, which is www.yourallset, yourealset.com. And we're also on Facebook under Alset, ALSET. So yeah, check us out. And we had quite a lot of content on our website, a lot of blogs that talk about bartering. And if you're ever confused or you want to look me up, I'm also able to be tracked under robert.lowe@youreallset.com.
Very cool. Thank you again, and I'm sure we'll talk more soon.
Okay, Adam, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you and your audience. Thank you, all the best for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Talk soon. Peace.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
So there you have it, episode 157 with Robert Lowe. That was fun. I really appreciate his journey and story, and it's been cool to connect with him. Anyway, for everything about this show, please check out peoplewelovepodcast.com, at peoplewelovepodcast on Instagram. I'm at Adam Choit on Instagram and Twitter, adamchoit.com for everything else. I think that's about all I got for today, though. I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you as always. And let's talk soon. Peace.